Welcome to VID-O-RAMA, where we remember the VHS releases of the past in graphic detail. My name's Adron Jones, and today I invite you to join me as I quantum leap through the movie rentals of the past, painting tributes devoted to them as I go. Today I'll be leaping to 1988 and celebrating the Jim Wynorski remake of Not of This Earth. If this is your first time with us, let me firstly explain. I start off by re-watching the movie and then take notes. I draw a rough sketch, and then once I'm happy with that, I photocopy the sketch to thin card for painting. I use acrylic paint and I also use pens. The pens are used mostly for detail. The colours I'm using today are Mars Black, Titanium White and Velvet Purple. So the movie, as I mentioned, is a remake of the classic Roger Corman movie from 1957, which was written by Charles B. Griffith and Mark Hanna, which concerns a nurse called Nadine Story. She encounters an odd patient called Mr. Johnson who needs a blood transfusion due to the fact that his body isn't producing any. She is hired by the mysterious stranger, and as she spends time with him in his house, she soon realises that he is in fact an alien from the planet Davana, who is looking for a ready supply of human blood to send back to his planet to save his kind, who are ravaged by an atomic war. Now I hold my hands up right away and admit, remakes, not so keen on them, but this one I love. Like many other remakes of 50s horror and sci-fi movies made in the 1980s, there's something about it that just makes it worth checking out. It's a well-known documented fact that all this came about due to a bet. The great Jim Wynorski, the man that brought us such greats as The Lost Empire, The Return of Swamp Thing, Deathstalker 2 and of course Chopping Mall, well, he made a bet with the king of exploitation cinema, Roger Corman, and said that he could produce a remake in 11 days, just as Corman had done back in the 50s. He was given the same budget. Obviously the budget was adjusted for inflation, and Wynorski, already used to working with low budgets and condensed schedules, welcomed the challenge and used every method known to him and shot the movie in 10.5 days. On paper, an almost word-for-word remake of a classic made purely as a bet would seem to not have any redeeming factors to it, but it really isn't the case here. It is a fun movie. It has a great cast and great humour. As my wife was quick to point out, this movie also contains two other elements in it that I also like in my movies, that one can always count on in a Jim Wynorski movie. I will let you figure out what she meant by that. Anyway, moving on, the film was made for VHS release, but it did receive a limited theatrical run due to the hype surrounding the star of the movie, Traci Lords, who played Nadine. The part was originally played, of course, by Beverly Garland. Traci Lords was in the public eye at this time. You don't need me to go over all that. And this was her first mainstream movie, in fact. And she's great in it. She brings beauty, humour to the film, and strength to the character. You saw me adding some detail there. Blood is a reoccurring theme in this movie, and so I try to combine space with blood cells under a microscope. I love Jim Wynorski movies. The victim in the car you see here was Belinda Grant. Apparently Wynorski met her selling flowers in Hollywood. This was her only film role. The blood being drained from her was actually Hawaiian Punch. The lady in the transporter is Rebecca Perle, the girl from Planet Davana. She'd worked with Clint Eastwood and appeared in Savage Streets and Bachelor Party before she did this role. It's worth noting that it's not actually her voice in the movie though. She wasn't available to record her dialogue, and so her voice was replaced by an uncredited Angel Tompkins. She was in several films, The Teacher, 1974. She was also in The Bees with John Saxon in 1978. And she had a small part in my own personal favourite movie, Alligator from 1980. Wynorski hired her because of her sexy voice. There is one scene in which this character features, but not really. I'm not sure if this is actually a spoiler as such, but there is an attack scene which is lifted from Hollywood Boulevard, a slasher made in 1976, which in itself is a film that was made up of other movies, a result of another bet between Roger Corman and John Davison. Another movie that Wynorski recycled scenes from was Galaxy of Terror, This spaceship was from that movie. It features at the very start of Not of This Earth, indicating that this was the craft that brought Mr. Johnson to our planet. He borrowed scenes from other movies as well. Scenes from Forbidden World, The Terror, Piranha, and Humanoids from the Deep can be found throughout, which helped to pad out the movie's running time and save money, of course. I wanted this piece to have a strong space theme to it, so I'm adding various stars and planets and galaxies with a pen. Before I move on again with the pen and add some Kirby Crackle, named in honour of the great Jack the King Kirby, one of the most prolific comic book artists of our time. He pioneered this style, applying various overlapping dots. He used it to great effect to represent cosmic energy and strange forces from space. It's a style I love, and I'm unashamedly using it here. I haven't covered this gentleman yet, Arthur Roberts, who played Mr. Johnson, the man with the glowing eyes. He appeared in a few of Wynorski's movies, such as Chopping Mall and Big Mama 2. He went on to appear in Transylvania Twist after this. You never see his eyes in the movie, he's either wearing shades or they added a glowing effect. Far more comfortable than the contact lenses that Paul Birch had to wear in the original. Arthur Roberts, who wasn't a fan of the original, told issue 75 of Fangoria magazine that he played Mr. Johnson as somebody who wasn't familiar with the language and had learnt it from a computer. Although he joked at Wynorski's ability to get topless women into most scenes, he expressed his admiration as to how fast he worked, saying that he shot an amazing 64 setups on the first day. And now the star of the movie, Traci Lords. I used an early promotional photo of her as a reference for this. Added those sunglasses that she wore. She went on to a very successful career after this movie. And this would actually be the last movie she appeared nude in, turning down a role in The Haunting of Morella in 1990, which was another Wynorski movie. She didn't agree with Corman's infamous breast and nudity quota in each movie clause, so instead she went on to star in John Waters' Cry Baby in 1990, and was in many other movies and television roles. She was in Blade, of course, and she would eventually work with Wynorski again in Shakansa's Women Prison Massacre in 2015. She's also a very successful author and singer. She sang Love Never Dies on the soundtrack to Pet Sematary. But it all started with this film. As predicted, the movie did very well, and Wynorski not only won the bet, but he also bought a house with the revenue he received for the film and called it the House of Lords. He would then remake another Corman classic, Wasp Woman, in 1995 for Roger Corman Presents, a series of films made for Showtime. Interestingly, or at least I think so, there was also a remake of a remake. This film was remade again for Roger Corman Presents, with Michael York as Johnson. It has some cool effects in it. Arthur Roberts has a small role in it. Watch it if you're curious. Almost at the end now, adding the final bits of detail. I'm not sure if you could tell, but I'm a big fan of Wynorski's work, and so I'm delighted to be able to feature another of his movies on the channel. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out the Chopping Mall painting I did last year. But we are coming to the end now, just adding the last bits of detail. I hope you've enjoyed it, and that the finished painting has earned a like from you. Please consider subscribing, as it really does help the channel. Many more painting videos devoted to movies of the past are on the way, and if this is a return visit, thank you for joining me again and showing your support either by subscribing, sharing the videos or joining the video club. But until the next painting, take care, bye for now.